Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. If you are an undergrad currently navigating your way through sociology or communications courses, you are going to want to pay close attention today. We're unpacking a truly fascinating 70-year-old framework. I mean, if you've ever sat there and wondered how certain things just magically go viral, well, this is it. This is the ultimate blueprint. We are talking about the diffusion of innovation theory, and I promise you it's going to completely change how you look at the tech and the trends surrounding you every single day.
So let's make this real. Let's think about your daily campus life for a second. Why is it that certain technologies, like the My Sujatra app during the pandemic or those e-wallets everyone uses, seem to take over the world literally overnight? It felt like everyone just had them on their phones instantly, right? Meanwhile, other tech, like maybe solar panels or complex big data platforms, take years, sometimes even decades, to actually catch on. You really have to ask, what is that secret ingredient that makes one trend explode while another one just completely flops?
Well, here is our game plan for today to make sure you are totally prepped for your exams. We're going to hit 5 key areas. First, what is diffusion? Second, key theory assumptions. Third, the adopter categories. Fourth, the 5 factors of spread. And finally, evaluating the theory.
Okay, let's jump right into part 1. What exactly is diffusion?
Before we get into the crazy mechanics of virality, we need a little bit of history and a really rock-solid definition. This whole concept was actually first kicked around way back in 1903 by a French sociologist named Gabriel Tarde. But it wasn't until the 1950s that Everett Rogers really took it, developed it, and turned it into the framework we use today. Now, if you're taking notes for your exam, this is the exact academic definition you need to memorize. Diffusion is the process by which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over a period of time among the members of a social system. And hey, a quick dip, an innovation in this context doesn't just mean a shiny new iPhone. It's any idea, practice, or object that a person perceives as brand new. It could be a new study method, a political ideology, or even a weird viral dance trend.
Now, what's really wild is that every single trend you see spreading out there relies on 4 interconnected elements to survive. You need the innovation itself. You need a communication channel. And wow, this is a massive one today. Back in the day, channels were mostly just traditional mass media or word of mouth. Today, that channel is TikTok or Instagram, which heavily accelerates the whole process. You also need a social system, which is basically the network of people, like your entire university campus. And finally, you need time. The innovation has to move through stages, from invention to diffusion through the network, and eventually to consequences like total widespread acceptance or, well, total rejection.
Let's move on to section 2, key theory assumptions. We're going to spend a minute here because understanding the people behind the spread is an absolute requirement for this theory, and it's a huge focus for your syllabus.
So, the absolute crucial point here is distinguishing between 2 very specific roles in our social networks. On one side, we have the opinion leader. Think of them as your favorite social media influencer. They have direct, undeniable influence on the behavior of the everyday adopters. On the flip side, we have the change agent. A change agent is the person, like a marketer or salesperson, who is actively trying to encourage that opinion leader to adopt or push an innovation. To wrap your head around this, just picture a massive tech company launching a new smartphone. The engineers and marketers, they're the change agents. They desperately want to disrupt the market, but they know you probably won't listen to a boring corporate ad. So what do? They hand the phone over to a famous tech reviewer on YouTube, the opinion leader. The theory heavily assumes that diffusion practically relies on this precise 2-step flow of communication to gain any real traction.
And that leads us to another massive assumption, one that's all about us, the public, the users. The theory assumes we can all be categorized based on something called innovativeness. In academic speak, that's the degree to which an individual is relatively early in adopting a new idea compared to other members of a social system. Why is this such a big deal? Because it explicitly acknowledges that we are not a monolith. People have completely different psychological appetites for risk. Some of you are incredibly quick to download the absolute newest, buggiest, untested AI study tool before your friends even know it exists. Meanwhile, others will literally wait until the professor mandates it for the final project. This basic assumption that our risk tolerance completely varies is exactly what sets up the theory's most famous concept.
Which brings us right to section 3, the adopter categories. So who exactly are you in this social system? This classic academic bell curve brilliantly maps out how a population reacts to something new over time. Let's break it down. Starting way over on the far left, you've got this tiny group, just 2.5%, called the innovators. These are the ultimate risk takers, the tech enthusiasts who want the absolute newest thing, glitches and all. Next up are the early adopters, 13.5%. These are usually our opinion leaders, the folks who figure out what's actually good.
Then we hit the massive middle. First, the early majority at 34%. These are your pragmatists. They need to see the innovators test the waters before they jump in. They're followed by the late majority, also at 34%. These are the more conservative folks who wait until a product is a proven necessity or until peer pressure is just too heavy to ignore. And finally, trailing at the very end, we have the laggards at 16%. Now, they aren't necessarily anti-tech. They might just face economic barriers or have a deep attachment to tradition. They basically only adopt something when they are absolutely forced to. And to really anchor this curve in your memory, think about the emotional journey happening here. It's a complete psychological roller coaster. You've got the innovators at the start jumping in while the product is still working at the kinks, basically shouting, "This is brilliant." Then, the early adopters have to navigate this incredibly dangerous gap, often called the chasm between early hype and actual widespread acceptance. By the time the early and late majority finally get involved, the thing is totally mainstream. They're buying it because they heard someone famous like Ashton Kutcher has one, or because it's sitting on the shelf at every big box store. And then finally, you get the deep sigh of the laggard, sitting there asking, "Wait, what new product?" It is a perfectly accurate human journey across that curve.
All right, moving into section 4, the 5 factors of spread.
So, we know who adopts these things, but what actually dictates the speed? Why does one app sweep through the entire early majority in a week while another one just totally stalls out? Honestly, I highly recommend pausing the explainer right here to screenshot these 5 factors, because these are what literally make or break a viral trend. First is relative advantage. Is this new thing clearly better than the old thing? If yes, it spreads faster. Second, compatibility. Does it fit with your existing life and values? If an e-wallet doesn't link to the banks that students actually use, it fails right here. Third is complexity. Is it easy? If an app makes you go through a 10-step verification process, people will just quit. Keep it simple. Fourth is trialability. Can you test it out first? Think about a 7-day free trial for a streaming service. And fifth is observationability. Can users actually see other people using it in the wild? If you see literally everyone scanning a QR code at the campus cafe, you're going to download that app too. Nail all 5 of these, and rapid diffusion is pretty much guaranteed.
And finally, let's wrap things up with section 5, evaluating the theory. How does this classic framework hold up today? When modern academics evaluate this theory, there's a really interesting split. On the plus side, it has incredible heurism. That basically means it is highly applicable. It's used as a foundational tool across countless research topics, from healthcare to agriculture to software development. But it does have one really big logical flaw today. The theory was built on the assumption that an innovation basically stays exactly the same throughout its entire diffusion process. Look, in 1950, a forming tool didn't magically change once you bought it. But today, tech is definitely not static. A software platform can change its user interface entirely overnight. Apps get massive updates, features are completely overhauled, all while the product is still moving through that bell curve. And that heavily disrupts the traditional model.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative question to really chew on for your upcoming papers. If platforms like ChatGPT and major AI tools are evolving and updating every single week, does the adoption curve ever truly finish? I mean, how do we even measure the late majority of a product that is fundamentally different today than it was when the innovators first tried it? It's kind of mind-blowing, right? Keep that in mind as you watch the tech trends popping up around campus.